And this hangout is live. Konnichiwa, bitches. Welcome to the third episode of the Ultimate Man's League podcast. This is the commish coming at you, joined by the reigning UML champion and owner of the Fozzie Fullbacks. Ladies, please welcome Connor Hemme.
I like the sound of that intro about me winning. I like that.
Yeah, don't get used to it there, pal. So Connor, if you tuned in last week, you knew that we're going to talk about week 2. We're going to talk about how the league's shaping up so far. Obviously, we'll do our power ranking tiers. We'll talk about some week 3 matchups. We'll do our game of the week, and we'll finish off with some bold predictions. Ray may or may not join us. I doubt it, but he might.
Yeah.
And if he comes by, we'll have him jump in wherever we are at that moment. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my screen share here, so that people can see some information as I'm talking. Connor, we good?
We're good.
All right. So why don't we go ahead and talk about some of these week 2 matchups? And why don't we go ahead and start with yours, Connor?
Okay.
I'll keep it really clear. What the hell happened?
Half my team is hurt. That's a part of what happened. Elliott did nothing for me. That's what happened. It was all around a shit show. I had Jordy Nelson play 1 snap and go down, which is the best kind of outcome you could get.
Pretty much.
Greg Olson broke his foot. Jameis Winston played Chicago, so he didn't really have to do all that much. It was just, Derek Carr played the Jets. That's the only thing I had going for me, because he had 3 touchdowns, because the Jets are the worst team imaginable. And other than that, that's pretty much what happened.
So you don't want to give any credit to the reigning toilet seat holder in AJ?
Do I want to give credit? I want to give credit to whoever helped him out on draft day. That guy was a genius.
Actually, I was at the draft. That guy was kind of a dick, to be honest.
Maybe to you, but
but no, AJ's got some players on this team. He's decent at tight end, better than we probably would have thought he would have been. This team is much better than it's been, and 2-0. It's already more games he won last year. So why don't we go ahead and continue with these recaps here?
Actually, I do have one more stat to throw at you from this game.
Sure.
The last time that the Fozzie Fullbacks lost a game, Peyton Manning and Kobe Bryant were still playing in their professions. Star Wars: The Force Awakens came out. Mayweather beat Pacquiao, not McGregor. Derrick Henry won the Heisman, and Obama was still president. So I'm just going to throw that out for you. You can do what you want with that.
Yeah, it was week 13, I believe, of the 2015 season was the last time you lost.
Not too shabby.
Which is pretty good, actually, as they say in the old country, and is pretty good. Anyway, if you're done gloating, we can move on to the next game.
Yeah.
We'll talk about.
Should I bring out the trophy? I didn't bring it with me.
You should have. I don't know why you wouldn't. Well, let's talk about Joe and Steve here. Now, this is a couple of teams that maybe weren't expected to be playoff teams, but we probably would have expected them to do a little bit better. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, I don't know that I would say one team didn't do well. I think Joe's team definitely improved momentously from week 1. I think he probably had a scare week 1. He thought he was going to be garbage again. And I think he had a pretty decent score, 156 points, or 151 points. That's not too bad. Bryant's finally coming around. Todd Gurley's being the Gurley we thought he was. Abdullah's still a work in progress. I don't know if that's ever going to work out.
He looks good when you watch the Lions play, though. He looks.
I think it's more of the Lions' offense as a whole rather than necessarily Abdullah. But Ebron shined. Simeon is looking fantastic now out of nowhere. I think his team is still very middle of the pack, but I think it's definitely a bright spot for him this week. I think he should be happy. As for Steve's team, I could say the opposite. I think it's not looking quite like you wanted. I think Howard is the major point to look at there. If you want to take it from here, Doug.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of hit it on the head with Joe's team there. He's got a few good players. The problem with Joe's team, problem with a lot of the middle of the pack teams, he's got no star power. His best player is, I guess, Todd Gurley, and
which he had to draft in the first round.
Yeah, and so it's going to be hard for him to build off of that. He's probably going to have to throw him back. He's heavily invested in that LA in that Rams team, which isn't a good place to be. I mean, they've looked a lot better, but it hasn't been too great. The big concern I would have if I'm Steve, though, is Jordan Howard not just being hurt, but being the second best running back on his own team.
Yeah.
Tariq Cohen looks great. He's fast. He's elusive. The thing is, he's just flat out not big enough to take 100% of the role. But Jordan Howard was like one of the worst pass catching backs in the league last year. I think
and what really makes it and breaks it is that Jordan Howard is on a team that needs a back that's not what he is. They need someone who can catch the ball, who's loose and can go on wide receiver sets. And Cohen's doing that. Howard can't do that. If he were on the Broncos, he'd be fine doing what he's doing. But to be on a team this bad in this offense, he's just not gonna. It doesn't connect with the team, and now he's hurt and he hasn't played up to what Cohen's doing. So, I'm concerned for him for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and obviously, Steve, being a Bears fan, has got to be concerned about that as well. But he also gave up a lot on draft day to get Jordan Howard in the building, and it doesn't look too great. Dalvin Cook looks like he's going to be a solid NFL player, though. For Steve, and Carlos Hyde looks good as well.
Not so much this game, but week 1, Dalvin Cook looked. He broke Adrian Peterson's record for most yards in his first game for Minnesota. Vikings, yeah. That's good company. So.
Yeah, and wide receiver, I've mentioned this pretty much every time Steve's team has come up. He looks good long term at the position, but it's just there's no star power there. Brandon Cooks is one of many mouths to feed there in New England. Moving on, let's go ahead and bring up the Murder Muppets versus the Rabbit College Rampage. Big win here for my Muppets, but very narrow margin of victory here. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think that Nelson was a blessing, and it just didn't end up working out for your dad. I was watching that game that night, and Randall Cobb looked like he was about to get all the touches you could imagine from Nelson not being in the game, and he ends up going down himself after he starts off pretty hot. I thought he was about to take it back, and he did not do that. It's a shame.
A real shame. What do you think about the health of this Rampage team? You got some big players with some injuries. You got Graham, Cobb, and Murray all left Sunday's action with injuries. Do you think that this team has the sort of depth that they need to be able to withstand this level of injury?
Well, I think the major thing you need to look at is his running backs. To have Murray possibly go down, Joe Mixon has yet to shine because that offense is in complete chaos. I don't know. I mean, he's clearly the most talented back, and he should be getting these carries, but he's not done so far. And to have all of your strength being Ajayi, talk about, who's going to get injured next. Yeah. That's not exactly the vote of confidence you want. That being said, he does have P. Ryan from your trade with him that if anything could save his running back core right now, it'd be P. Ryan shining in future games. Otherwise, I think that running back core is very weak if Murray can't go. As far as wide receivers are concerned, Jeffrey's finally getting in the swing of things. Hopkins much better with the new quarterback with Savage out of the picture. And his tight ends are looking pretty weak. I think he's definitely lost a step. I think if P. Ryan can show up and Kittle's any good, maybe that's where you'll see him get back in the swing of things. He's not going to find it in Zay Jones. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, cool. And what about this surprise Murder Muppets team? 2-0, undefeated, wrecking house all over the place on the back of Kareem Hunt. How far can this team go, Connor?
Well, I think you're wrong about this surprise team. I'm seeing Kareem Hunt here. I'm seeing Gillislee. I'm seeing Henry on the bench now with news about Murray. And I'm saying that running backs win you games, and you have running backs. Yes, you have no quarterbacks. You have sneaky wide receivers. Hill and Garcon could have put up points now and again. Lee was a good pickup. Hunter Henry finally showed up this week. Who knows what's going to happen between Howard and Brate, but I mean, outside of your quarterbacks, you have potential, and I think that you are better off than some of the teams you say are better than you, in my opinion. As much as it hurts me to say.
Interesting. We'll bring that up more when we get to the power rankings. Let's see here. Let's take a gander at one of the other contenders in this league. Queef Wellington versus the Pain Train. Now, it looked like early Sunday afternoon, like Alex had a real shot at this one. The projections were pretty close, but in the end, I think the superior team proved that they were just that. I think that this team of Carlos isn't even firing all cylinders yet, and it's still one of the best in the league. Yes,
C.J. Anderson lit it up on our poor Dallas team.
Yeah.
That was a disaster. Julio Jones is Julio Jones, and he didn't even have a crazy week. Ended up being Devontae Adams of all people to really shine in this one. I mean, it's just it shows you what having a team with depth can do for you, and his team's going to be good for quite a while.
Yeah, you got to Thielen when Beckham's out.
Yep, you got to. I mean, watching Allen, could he go down? Sure, but you have Beckham on the bench. He's going to be back in the swing of things. Thielen's Thielen, and Devontae Adams clearly isn't going away. So I mean, all the concerns can be answered with depth. Not the same can't be said for Alex, however, having to play Foreman first of all in your starting lineup, and I've seen no activity for the most part on waiver wire besides Torrey Smith, and that's very concerning.
Yeah, it is, and this is kind of the thing that got Alex into trouble in the past. He had a good, strong core of elite players, which he still has, and that always got him to the playoffs, and he was always competitive. But the problem is when injuries happened, he would lose, and we thought that last year, because Alex went very rookie heavy last year. I thought, at least I did, that he had kind of turned the corner on this old player philosophy. And you look at this team now, there's exactly one rookie in his starting lineup. And he's got, Aaron Rodgers is over 30, Matt Forte is over 30, Darren Sproles over 30. I think Mike Wallace is 30, if I'm not mistaken. Martellus Bennett's over 30. Mason Crosby is, but that doesn't really matter. Jason Witten is a grandfather. And Ted Ginn and Torrey Smith are both over 30 as well. So the thing is, it's all these old players, and like a lot of them can still play, but it's not the kind of team that's gonna win you games into the fantasy playoffs. But we'll talk about this team a little bit more during power rankings. I thought though that game went pretty much how I expected it to. Let's take a gander at D's Nates versus the Toad Point Trippers. An absolute fucking smackdown. Thoughts?
My dad's team is very good. To have not only to have the lineup you have, but then to plug in a guy like Chris Thompson and get 25 points out of him. It's just an embarrassment of riches. Jordan Reed's injured. It's to be expected, but I don't see that derailing him at all. When you have the team you have, and then Njoku, of course, out of nowhere starts to shine in this past game. So it's almost like every problem he comes up with, he's got an answer for. Woodhead went down, doesn't matter. James White looks like he's going to be the most consistent guy in New England. He still has Drew Brees. I mean, if Bell hasn't even shown up yet, and he doesn't need him. And Nate was just like a fly on the windshield for him right now.
Yeah, this D's Nate's team again. I mean, we gave Alex a hard time, but he did make a couple really great trades at the draft, and one of them was with this D's Nate's team. And you see Nate is just really struggling at the running back position, not getting almost. I mean, the players he has aren't terrible. Bilal Powell, Jonathan Stewart, Curtis Lynch, but those should be like your borderline starters, your bench running backs, not your core, not your starting lineup. And you see, Will Tye, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Marshall is cooked. By the way, he's done. You just see a bunch of really bad players, frankly, on this team. It's basically the fantasy equivalent of the New York Giants.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, and I thought Nate made a good move picking up Kerwin Williams.
I mean, he's picked up Severian Jenkins. I think is a very sneaky, solid pick. By week 4, he could be a nice replacement.
Well, he's back this week.
He's back this week, and plug him in with Fleener. His tight ends just got dramatically better.
Yeah,
but I mean, if he needs to make more moves like that. I think this is the opposite of Alex's problem. I think that he's a very active owner. He just needs to make the right choices and find that solid talent. He goes for too much risk.
Yeah, with Brady and Cousins though, I imagine he'll he'll win a few games on the backs of some strong performances from his quarterbacks, but he's just gotta keep consistently improving. Like Kerwin Williams didn't work out. It doesn't look like it's going to work out, but it was the right move.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good move. Why don't we go ahead and move on? See what do we have left here. Ray versus Tim. Are the Penguins good, Connor?
Who did he play the first week?
I believe it was like Steve or something.
I would say, I don't know. I call his team good, but I will say it's got some pieces that are very exciting. He's got Montgomery, he's got Fournette, he's got Stafford at the helm. I mean, if Dez ever shows up on certain weeks like he did, as bad as Dallas played, he finally got some production out of Dez.
He is impossible to cover in the end zone.
I mean, he's got pieces that make you scared. I will say that.
This team can tank 200 on him.
I'm looking at the bench right now. He's got J.J. Nelson on his bench, which is a fantastic pickup. Or did you? I don't know if you drafted him or not, but that was a fantastic pickup.
He drafted him, yeah.
And I mean, having Hogan there, that's another solid pick that is starting to work out. His tight end's his problem. Andy Dalton needs to show up. If Andy Dalton shows up, I'd say he could go for a 500 record, which I'm surprised at with how I thought he might go this year. I think his team's definitely better than advertised, but I don't think it's anything playoff worthy yet. Not that I can see.
Now, while some teams have been really lucky this year, like me and AJ and Tim to a degree, Ray has gotten himself into some bad luck. He's run into some big numbers on the other side of the ledger. But I like this team actually. He's got to do some improvements to the bottom half of his roster. But you see Buck Allen there and Jaquiz Rodgers. Like this is like you mentioned before, running backs win you games. This is a decent running back group.
Yeah, I mean, having Cohen on our team already, that's a fantastic move by Ray. If what I'm looking at when I see this team right here, and I'm looking at their scores, Crabtree went off. The rest of the team, got 15 to 10 points, and I feel like in next week, half of these players could have 20 points plus. Mm-hmm. He's a dangerous team. I think maybe this week he only got 135. He could easily get 180 on a given week. I think he's going to be very streaky, unfortunately, which is I don't understand necessarily why.
Well, he's got to get a lot of
young
players here, but he's good at quarterback, and he's decent in every position except for tight end. If Tyler Higbee catches one pass for 10 yards, he wins this game.
Yeah,
and until he can get that figured out, he's going to keep giving him points. You see, he's got Nick Boyle and Max Williams. We'll see what happens in that Baltimore area. But the Buck Allen pickup was great. I cannot believe they let the guys at the top let him get Buck Allen last week. But this is another team that's doing what it needs to do to improve. And if he keeps at it, I think this is a team that's going to be in the mix come November, December. But 0-2 is 0-2.
Only 3 teams have won the Super Bowl going 0-2 in the regular season.
Interesting piece of trivia. Who were those teams?
One was Jesus, put me on the spot. One was a Dallas team, and fuck the rest.
That's right. It was back when Emmitt Smith was on was holding out. Here's an interesting couple of teams here. Adam versus Pat. You see Pat with the big win here, and this team is this team is very similar to Ray's in that he's got some good players, but I think he'll be pretty streaky.
I think if there was a team that impressed me from week 2, it was Pat's team. I mean, he kind of hit me at one of my few good streaks, apparently, so far this season after the abysmal week 2. But his team's been solid. Blunt did not show up this game, but to be honest, him showing up week 1 was a surprise. But if you look at his team, it's very solid. He's always had fantastic wide receivers. He's had a talent for drafting them. Kelsey showed up this week. Phillip Rivers and Alex Smith aren't, exactly those names that you get excited about, but they get you the points you need to get. Lynch has turned out to look like he's back to his old form. Mm-hmm. He's got a solid team mixed with young players, old players. He's definitely got himself in a position to have a team that can compete for a while.
And this is what Pat does. Pat doesn't have, maybe with the exception of Mike Evans, doesn't have big time flashy players, but he works his waiver wire. He drafts well. I mean, he takes some risks in the draft, which a lot of times end up in some big whiffs. But he quietly makes his team very competitive. And this is exactly what he did a couple years ago when he won the championship, which was it was unexpected to probably everybody but Pat, who worked really hard at making what, if you remember his first year, what was a horrible team, making it into a perennial playoff contender.
Yeah, I mean, to be one of the 2 expansion teams, you can ask his opponent, the White Sharks, how it goes when you're part of the expansion team. It's hard to build a team quickly, and Pat seemed to manage to do that. And he's pretty much on par with some of the teams that have been in the league for years. With how he's built it. So, kudos to Pat.
It's great. Adam's team, we can talk about Marshawn Lynch being great. Adrian Peterson is not. This is going to continue to be a problem for Adam, as well as injuries. This team has gotten hurt a lot. Rob Kelly, Corey Coleman, Danny Amendola, whatever the hell is going on with Andrew Luck. The Kevin White injury, he probably cut Kevin White and leave Luck in that IR spot. But one thing I never like to see is bench spots, open bench spots. It's
I was about to say that myself. I see he's got a bench spot open.
And it's possible he cut somebody since then. But I really don't like to see that. But he's got some players that we like here. But the tight end position was actually really good for him this week. I wouldn't anticipate it's going to stay that way. You see John Ross, his rookie wide receiver, actually got him negative points. This team is rebuilding, and he's got really good quarterbacks that'll help him along that route. But I think it's going to take some more time before this team's a real threat.
Well, if I could give one piece of advice to Adam from what I've seen from over the years, and I can see it right now on his bench, he needs to let go of players. I feel like he doesn't have an easy time letting go of players. John Ross has not performed. Zenner does not need to be owned at this point. There's players on his bench that, I get that he saw something in them possibly, or that he wanted to keep them, but you have to, as an owner, you have to realize when to cut people loose, because you're going to miss out on opportunities like Ray getting Allen this past week. You're going to miss out on those players because you're holding on to guys that aren't going to perform.
And this is actually something that you actually know a fair bit about. That was something that plagued you a lot in the early years of the league. Your Percy Harvins.
I remember keeping Ward forever.
Yeah, and it's easy to do, because you learn about the players, and you're rooting for them. You want them to do well, and you believe in them. You think they're going to do well, and then you're stuck holding the bag on a poor fantasy season. I believe that is all of the week 2 results. But any big surprises for you so far in the season?
That I lost. I'd say one of the biggest for me when I'm looking at this team right now, Ray being 0-2 and Tim being 2-0, I would never have guessed that. I think that might be the biggest comparison I see here.
Would you expect him to be
your
the
father
season?
being 0-2?
Yeah, it's true. Me, Tim, and AJ all being undefeated going into
your bottom tier is 4-0 right now.
Yeah. Speaking of tiers, why don't we get into the power rankings here? The top tier is championship contenders. These are the two teams that I expect to make it into the UML championship game, and there is a change here, Connor. Number one, still Kevin, the Toad Point Trippers team looks absolutely unstoppable right now. But I moved Carlos Queef Wellington in here mostly on the back of one CJ Anderson. Now, you mentioned before that you think that running backs win championships, and this is the sort of thing that I think is going to go a long way for Carlo because he's got the best wide receiver group in the league, hands down. Don't want to hear any other opinion, right? If CJ Anderson's going to be a top 5 running back, which is what he's been so far, and he's going to get, the production he's going to get out of LaShawn McCoy, and then whatever he gets out of Riddick and Crowell and, whatever other running backs he decides to pick up, he's going to be really good at running back. The quarterback position and the tight end position are a little iffy. Ertz looks great. Hooper is going to be really inconsistent. I think this is an elite team. What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I think it's an elite team. You have McCoy, you have Beckham, you have Jones, Allen in there, and Ertz. I think all those guys are outstanding players. I think the biggest thing to watch maybe to make it fun whenever the Carlo Kevin matchup arrives is what is Crowell going to do for Carlo? I think that could be either make or break his trade with him. Reed might be injured for next week already. Crowell didn't show up last week. Will he show up in future weeks? I think having that, Anderson's going to put out what he puts out. I think he won't get 30 points again, but I think he can get 15 to 20 regularly. So I think Crowell is going to be the missing piece to his puzzle. And if he can get Crowell to perform and Hooper happens to shine the weeks he needs him, I think his team's going to win pretty much every week.
Yeah, he does need to get better. He needs another tight end. And he probably needs to work out a trade or something to get better at quarterback. Eli Manning, not going to get it done this year. I think that's a really, really bad. I think that's a sinking ship there in New York. And I think Odell Beckham's good enough where he'll still get his. But I just really worry about that New York team. And we talked about your dad's team, best team in the league, in my opinion, right now. No need to really go into greater detail because we know how much Kevin doesn't like us to talk about his team. The playoff contenders are you down a tier from last week and Pat. Now, which one of those teams do you think you want to go into? Since you're on the program, Connor, why don't you tell us what you think your strengths, weaknesses, and the outlook for your team is?
Well, the outlook compared to last week's looking a lot more bleak. Derek Carr has shined for me. A lot of people thought he was going to digress, and I think he's been pretty spot on. Jameis Winston, when he's in the right matchup, is going to perform for me. So I think my quarterbacks are still good enough that I don't have to worry about them. Kamara has shown up early for me. I wasn't expecting him to be this good this far. Not that I think he's been outstanding. I mean, he's put up 8 and 8 pretty much for the past 2 weeks. He's a running back 3. I think he's filling in a huge gap in my roster now. Devontae Freeman's fantastic. Elliott's going to get his weeks. I think last week was not something that's going to happen all the time. Pryor's probably my biggest concern. I have Macklin now.
He's getting a ton of targets, Pryor.
He just needs to show up. Washington just needs to get better is what it really is. It's not really his problem. It's the offense clicking. Macklin's shined so far. I haven't plugged him in yet, but I need to because he's probably going to go down with an injury soon. I think for having as many injuries as I've had, I think nobody else's team could withstand what I'm going to withstand this year. That being said, that doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily do all that well with that happening. I think I'm still going to go to the playoffs, and as soon as everybody gets healthy again, I will be someone to be reckoned with in the playoffs. I just think as of a regular season team, my team's going to have its losses. I don't expect to have this be my only loss of the season, but I don't think it's going to hinder me from making the playoffs, and I think I'm going to be fine.
Well, that's the thing.
Once my team's back, everybody needs to watch out.
I think a big thing for you is going to be the success of Arizona as an NFL team, because if they're trash and they're if it's week 13 or whatever and the fantasy playoffs are about to start and they're 4-8, David Johnson's not coming back. So and this is why you build a team with good depth. But right now, and I'm sure you're aware of this, your team has no depth. It's all it's all being used right now with these injuries and suspensions. You get Willie Snead back soon. Wide receiver, not really a position where you're really needing that.
And of course, talk about a team not doing what they were supposed to do with the Cardinals. New Orleans seems to be following that path as well. They need to figure things out. If New Orleans and the Cardinals can really pick up their offenses, my team is going to gain 3 or 4 players that are going to make my team amazing. They just need to actually perform.
Right. Moving on to the next tier, these are the playoff hopefuls. There's only 2 playoff spots to be had for these 3 teams. I put Ray, my dad, and Alex in this tier. So, Connor, why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts on this tier and the teams in it. And then once you're through that, go ahead and break down this Rabbit College Rampage roster for us.
You want me to rank those 3?
Well, I mean, what are your thoughts about the teams that are included? Should they be in this tier? Should they not be in this tier? What do you think?
I don't think Alex should be included in this tier. I think he's lost a step. He's 0-2, and he's not a team to be 0-2. I think if there was a team with his kind of lack of depth, you need a hot start, and he doesn't have that. And
this tier is collectively 0-6. There's no wins in this tier.
Well, you put it that way, actually, yeah. But I think out of these 3, he's the team that won't make up those wins. I think Doug Sr. has enough depth to withstand something and maybe get a couple wins. I think Ray's team will drastically improve, and he'll be right back in the mix of things soon. Ray's the clear-cut winner to me in this tier. I think Doug Sr. always has a trick up his sleeve, and Alex needs to do something on the waiver wire to have any confidence in his team. For me,
he needs. I mean, he's going to have a decent pick this week in the waiver wire. I know it's not a great week for it, but go out and get somebody that's going to potentially help out your team. Doesn't even need to be like I mean, there's no Buck Allen on the waiver wire this week, but go out and grab it. A decent wide receiver or like a handcuff running back or like. I think Jalen Richard might be available. I'm not sure. Go get somebody. Go make a move. But yeah, this Rampage team is better than its record. You're not going to see Cam Newton and Tyrod Taylor be this bad too often. We'll see what happens with the DeMarco Murray injury. Samaje Perine, starting running back now in Washington. We'll see how he does. The receivers woke up a lot. That's a strong group here. The tight end group is a bit concerning. Julius Thomas sucks. And Jimmy Graham is injury prone and playing on an offense that can't seem to protect their quarterback long enough for him to get the ball. Bengals defense, I imagine, will be cut for another defense since you're not going to start a defense against Aaron Rodgers. And then Steven Gostkowski's whatever. Once we get Joe Mixon going, I think this will be a good. That'll be a good bright spot for him. He can probably go ahead and cut bait on Zay Jones. I'm not sure there's a lot of value to be had there. Same thing with Devin Funchess. I mean, when are you going to start Devin Funchess? We'll see with George Kittle. He's injured too. And then Andre Ellington someone can roster him. I'm not sure it needs to be this team. And Joe Williams can just flat out get cut. Thoughts?
I think it's all about Mixon and Perine. I think he could go from having a terrible running back core to a great one in the blink of an eye. I feel like that's how your dad's team usually works. You look at his roster and you say, what's there? And then by week 5, you see all the flashes that he saw. The wide receiver's never been a problem for him. He's always managed to get, play. He's had some bad opportunities with Hopkins and Jeffries in the past, but I think that they're both going to turn around a little bit here. Tight end's obviously the clear-cut weak spot that he needs to address. I just don't know how, maybe through a trade.
Well, you got Ed Dixon available on the waiver wire this week, who I guess is going to play some more snaps with Greg Olsen out. But let's not sugarcoat it. He's not Greg Olsen, okay? He's not going to replicate the production. He'll give you UML tight end 2 production, no question. But if you're a tight end needy team, you're picking at the top of a bad waiver wire week. Ed Dixon, not the worst idea in the world for this team. Moving on to the next tier is actually a new tier. This is the first choice tournament favorite. It's a tier that consists of just one team. the team I think has the best chance of maybe not making the playoffs, but really raising some cane if they get into that first choice tournament. And it's going to be my brother's Petersburg Penguins. Is this a good team? Is this a playoff team? What's going on with this team?
I would say it's a playoff team if other teams fall apart. Say my team continue to not get healthy, but.
So you think this is a team
that
gets into the playoffs by attrition? If other teams get injuries and his doesn't, he'll work his way up in the playoffs. The 2-0 start's really important for this team. Leonard Fournette and Ty Montgomery looking good are huge things for this team. I don't think this team will end up getting into the playoffs, like you said, but it's looking good overall. This team is much improved.
Definitely improved quite a bit.
And could definitely win that first choice tournament. But we talked a little bit about this team earlier, so why don't we move on to the first choice tournament fodder. These are teams I don't expect to make the playoffs. You got Steve, Joe, Adam, and my team, the 2-0 Murder Muppets, the rebuilding Murder Muppets. Connor, why don't you go ahead and pick out a team out of this list that you want to highlight?
That I want to highlight? I feel like I've talked about your team quite a bit. I think I told you off air that I think that you and Alex should switch places, that I think that you should be higher in the list and that he should be lower. So I'll talk about Joe's team a little bit. I think if there's maybe someone who could duke it out in the first pick tournament, I think that Joe's team could be the team to do it.
He needs to get some star power, and the only way to do that is to win that tournament.
Exactly. I think that if there's anybody who wants that first pick badly enough, I think it would be him. He's got Todd Gurley at that first pick, but, who knows what – I had Peterson the one year before he tanked it, and I traded that away in a heartbeat for Elliott. He could get a player like that himself by trading away Gurley and get something out of Gurley as well. But, Watkins – I think Watkins may be a secret to what he needs to get moving. I think if Watkins could actually perform to what he was supposed to be years ago and not get injured again, he could be a sneaky player that ends up doing something for him. Ebron needs to keep it consistent. Simeon and Palmer need to keep it, in the positives. They need to keep that 15 to 20 point range. I think that this is a team that he has average players that have the possibility of doing a bit better. He has Bryant who could shine any week. Abdul that could turn it around. Bernard needs to surpass Hill enough to actually be used when Mixon gets more involved. If those things work for him, he's going to have a solid lineup and he can get by on bye weeks because he still have, John Brown if he can ever come back from his woes. He's got Sanu on the bench. Watson's going to be a plug-in Houston. The Houston quarterback Watson could be plugged in and maybe get him, a 30-point game if he runs the ball or, kind of does like a Tim Tebow kind of style thing where he just happens to be fantastic for fantasy. That's what I see out of this team. I think that he has a good shot in the loser bracket of doing something.
Yeah, I agree. And Joe is, always one to, work the waiver wire, improve his team. This team's only going to get better as the season goes on, obviously barring injury. But he's got enough decent players. So like we mentioned before, there's just no star power on this team, and you can't win without it. The final tier is the squatters, the people doing anything they can to avoid the toilet seat. AJ and Nate. Now, we already talked about Nate a fair amount. Why don't we go ahead and give AJ his due? Connor, am I off base ranking the undefeated Team Man Bear Pig in the squatters column?
Not necessarily. I think that, I think there's a shot that I could see, if Steve can't get his team back together and Adam, maybe faltering, he could be better than those teams. Maybe he could be the fourth worst. He's already 2-0, which may not be – there may not be a team to get 2 wins for all we know. So he may not have to worry about getting the toilet bowl again. But I just don't think his team's good enough to exactly, put a vote of confidence into it. Terrence West is on the way out now. Whether he's healthy or not, Buck Allen looks better. Matthews is in Buffalo, and it's going to be no good for him. Decker struggles to get his due when he's on that team because of so many weapons. Demaryius Thomas, it's either him or it seems to be Sanders certain weeks. He's never going to be a consistent wide receiver to me. I think that there's just too much inconsistency and not enough star players because for outside of I think 2 or 3 players, this team was entirely drafted. He needs to find players and stick with them, and actually have a developed roster. I feel like he's always starting from scratch every year.
That's true.
You just can't win.
He doesn't keep enough players. That's what I was going to say. Like he's got the opposite problem of Adam. AJ's got no problem cutting bait. And
he does play the waiver wire often and well. But I mean, he's got Alan Hearns on his bench now. You know, if he plugged that in, he could have definitely beaten me. But I mean, that was a smart pickup. Alan Hearns is going to be, you know, the one wide receiver in Jacksonville. Not that Jacksonville has a great offense, but you know, he knew to get him because he's going to be the guy to actually get thrown to. I mean, that's a smart pickup. It's going to solve his Decker and Matthews issue. You know, I think he's very good on the waiver wire. He just needs to be good on draft day and when he's filling out his keepers.
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't want to be wearing that toilet seat again. Let's go ahead and get into these week 3 matchups. We've already talked about the teams a whole lot. So let me just get into kind of the narrative behind some of these matchups and go from there. We'll go ahead and start with this Pain Train Murder Muppets matchup. Is this a must-win for Alex?
I think this past week was a must-win for him. I think that the more he loses, the further and further away he's going to get at doing anything this year. I think that, you know, his playoff chances have if he loses this week, his playoff chances are really out the window to me. Wow. I think that he's really going to I just don't see him with the activity he has on his radar for adding players. I just don't see him turning it around if he's going to go 0-3, 0-4, or, you know, end up, you know, 2-6, 2-7. He's just never going to come back, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like I said this last week when I was talking with Nate on the podcast, and I said to him, Alex, if you want to be taken seriously, you know, you got to go out and beat Carlo. You got to make a win, and his team just completely folded. You lose to this rebuilding Murder Muppets team, and it's like you're in toilet seat territory. Like if you can't beat a team like this, then you know you gotta take a long, hard look at what's going on. That said, I think Alex has got a shot at this one. He's obviously projected to win. We'll see how it goes, but it's very losable. And if he loses it, I agree with you. He's in for some trouble. Steve versus Carlo. Carlo wins, basically. Is there any reason to think Steve's got a shot?
No, I think Carlo's going to. I feel like the first 2 weeks, Carlo looked like, ooh, could he be that one team to lose a game early on, with Manning struggling and not having Beckham, and I just feel like that's gone now. So I feel like his team's going to start showing its elite power. He's going to keep adding to that win total. It's going to take the bye weeks for him to start to lose games, in my opinion.
Yeah, Steve, I think in this case is really running into a buzzsaw. A full strength Queef Wellington is really gonna boat race him. I don't think there's really any question about it. You got Adam and Nate. This is not a super exciting matchup. Nate projected to win by 30 points. This is a must win for Nate, no?
Yeah, I think this is showing if Nate has any life into his team at all. You know, I feel like he's starting to look like the go-to failure of the year. I feel like he could very easily have the toilet seat around his head. I think if he's going to get a win against a guy like Adam with his team, you know, being kind of a little subpar itself, if he were to blow it against Adam, I just see him falling apart entirely.
See, and it's not for nothing. These are the sorts of games that you need somebody like Nate needs to win, right? Or Adam needs to win, because those tiebreakers, there's a good chance that, you know, Adam and Nate have the same record at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. And it could really go a long way into not getting the toilet seat if you own that tiebreaker. Going into the next matchup, you got AJ versus Tim. Battle of surprisingly undefeated teams, combined 4-0 here as that phone continues ringing. Gonna stop? There it goes. Okay, cool, great. One of these teams is going to be 3-0. Connor, which one?
I feel like this is two middling teams that have gotten lucky and had really hot streaks to start the year. And I feel like it's going to go AJ's way. I'm going to call it on AJ.
AJ 3-0 AJ. We've seen AJ go on like
AJ.
surprising streaks before. If you remember, I think it might have been his first year in the league. He started off like 0-5 and then finished 7-6. Went to the play, got killed in the playoffs, but ended up making the playoffs after he started 0-5. So we've seen him have these streaks in the past. Tim hasn't really been a huge threat since that first season. I think Tim's team overall is better here. I'd say Tim's gonna take this one, but surprised that one of these teams is gonna be 3-0.
Yes.
Pat versus Doug Senior in another week. This could have been game of the week. One of these teams, one or both of these teams could be a 1-2. Do we think my dad gets off the schneid this week?
I think it all depends on P. Ryan performing well. He's going to play Oakland. It could be a decent matchup for him. It's going to be maybe a high-scoring game, depending on how well Washington can get together. And I just don't see Blunt in the lineup or having Williams there is going to help Pat. And I think the edge is going to go to your dad.
Yeah, but I gotta say, if you're my dad right now, seeing Pat come into the equation when you're 0-2, that's not what you want to see. You want to go against a cupcake, and Pat's team is far from that. No shame in losing to either of these teams, but I tend to agree with you. I think my dad's gonna. I don't see that team losing 3 games in a row, to be honest. And then the final one before we get to the game of the week is Ray versus Joe. Now, this game is almost dead even in terms of projection. Teams might not have set their lineups yet. What do we think about this Ray and Joe matchup?
I think this is important for both of them. I think this is going to maybe give Joe some incentive to think, hey, maybe I could be a playoff team. And I think for Ray, it's going to be, finally saying, I got off to a bad start, but my team's legit. I'm gonna put up numbers, and I'm going to show the league that I'm going to be competing. This is a huge vote of confidence for either team. And the team that loses, I think, really kind of takes a step back and kind of thinks about where they're going this year.
Yeah, like I said with the Alex before, Ray needs to win this one. You get Joe when you're 0-2, you got to beat him. You got to do, make your waiver wire move, do what you got to do. Get a good defense in there, get a good kicker in there, beat Joe. You can't lose to a team like that. Joe's team is what Ray's team was, I think. Maybe year before last.
I don't know.
But yeah, if you're going to be a playoff team, Ray, you got to go beat Joe. Which is going to bring us to the game of the week, a rematch of last year's championship game. Toad Point Trippers, Fossey fullbacks, Hemian on Hemian crime. What's going to happen here, Connor? You gonna beat the old man? You're projected to lose by 5.5 points.
I'm surprised it's that close. I don't think I'm going to win. It would take Kamara having a fantastic game, and I think Kamara and Pryor having a really strong performance, maybe having a freak game with like 20 points. If one of those two guys could do something for me, that would be great. But I just don't see my team putting up the numbers to keep up with my dad, unfortunately. And my dad also, I think he's lost to me outside of last year. He's never lost to me. So the odds are against me, I think.
The odds are not ever in your favor. Just for the people watching at home, let's go ahead and do a quick rapid-fire pick-em for Week 3, just so people have it for so they know where we stand, okay? Alex, Doug.
I'm taking Doug.
I'm taking Doug as well. Never pick against myself. Steve, Carlo. I'm going Carlo.
Carlo.
Game of the week, Kevin, Connor.
Kevin.
Connor. Let's go Adam, Nate.
I'm going with Nate finally winning.
I'm going with Nate too. That projections usually don't get that far apart. It's usually like when you're playing me or something like that. Like those are the kinds of teams that would get those kinds of projections. Tim, AJ.
I'm going with AJ.
I'm going with Tim. We got Doug Senior versus Pat.
I'll give it to Doug Senior.
I agree. And Joe versus Ray.
I'm going to give it to Ray.
I'm going to give it to Ray as well. Sorry, Joe. I just don't think you got the star power to compete with some of those running backs over there in Compton. Now, we're going to go one quick last segment. I know this is getting kind of long. Thanks for your time, Connor. Bold predictions. Go ahead and give us a couple of bold predictions for the UML this year.
Bold predictions, huh? I think that your team will make the playoffs.
Ooh, that's a bold prediction. I had no players going into the draft. You remember?
Yeah, well, trust me, it doesn't give me any kind of happiness having to say that. And maybe there's a backhanded compliment there by saying that that's bold for me to say that you're going to make the playoffs. But either way, bold prediction: my dad will not lose a game this year.
Ooh.
And I'll go with another bold prediction. I'm going to say that. Jeez, put me on a spot. Joe will make the playoffs.
Joe will make the team you just picked to lose is going to go to the playoffs. Yep. Bold prediction for me: Murder Muppets 13-0 once again, lose to Pat in the playoffs unexpectedly.
I
didn't
know we were going that bold.
I'm hanging onion. Okay, the onions are out. The onions grown. They're grown. You got, but no, I think bold prediction is you're going to see a team that is not the Toad Point Trippers win the UML championship, and I think that is bold. I think that is the clear favorite right now. Of course, doesn't really mean anything. I was, the clear favorite a couple of years ago, and Pat beat me. So
I was the favorite week 1, and now
and now look at you all the way down here. Oh, geez, it's middle of the pack. It's like the old days.
It only took a year and a half of not losing for this to happen, I guess. But
hey, I went a year and a half without losing, and then I lost in the semifinals to an upstart team out of nowhere. Hold on, let me go ahead and shut off the screen share. So Connor, thanks for joining me for this podcast. I wish we could have Ray on as well. Maybe we'll get him in next week. I know Carlo had said that he wanted to come on next week, so maybe we'll have 2 people next week. What were your thoughts on your first appearance on the podcast?
I had a lovely time.
That's really sweet of you to say.
Yeah.
Well, before we have an hour-long podcast for these guys to watch, why don't we go ahead and end this? Thanks so much, Connor, for joining us. If you like the podcast, please let us know in the comments below. If you want to be on the podcast, please let me know. The line is actually starting to form. Connor, we'd love to have you on again, maybe around playoff time when you're watching from home. And then until next time, this is the commish signing off. Konnichiwa, bitches.
Oh, there it is.